Over the last 75 years, North Korea has been invaded and bombed back to the Stone Age by the United States, subjected to unprecedented economic warfare, vilified in the international media, and had its population targeted in a massive psychological warfare campaign. U.S. leaders have predicted its imminent demise many times, believing that the country is run by a depraved family dynasty that keeps its population in slavery. Against insatiable odds, North Korea, however, has survived, with U.S. leaders getting it wrong. The Kim dynasty isn't reviled by its own people, but genuinely respected by many of them because it has helped them to weather savage attacks by a brutal foreign empire over generations. A key to the Kim's survival has been the development of a nuclear weapons arsenal that has spared North Korea the fate of Libya, Iraq, and Syria. Another key is North Korea's close relationship with China, and now Russia, and the Kim family's adherence to the Juche philosophy, which promotes self-reliance and support for industrial development. A.B. Abrams has published important recent books on atrocity fabrication, the Syrian conflict, North Korea, and on U.S. imperialism in Southeast Asia. Abrams' latest book, Surviving the Unipolar Era, North Korea's 35-year standoff with the United States, Atlanta, Clarity Press, 2024, tells the remarkable story of North Korea's survival in the midst of a barbaric 75-year regime change operation by the United States. The three-quarter-century-long regime change operation commenced at the end of World War II when Kim Il-sung consolidated power in North Korea and adopted a socialist model of governance. Kim had wide popular backing as a nationalist hero who had fought the Japanese in Manchuria. Japan had colonized Korea beginning in 1905 as part of an attempt to forge a Pacific empire to counter Western imperialism. In an attempt to prevent Korea's reunification under a socialist leader after World War II, the Truman administration artificially divided the country and financed the military and police apparatus of Syngman Rhee, a conservative nationalist who massacred over 100,000 dissidents prior to the official outbreak of the Korean War in 1950. Abrams discusses the horrific atrocities committed by the U.S. invading forces during the Korea War, which have been characterized as genocide by leading members of the South Korean government's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The atrocities included a massive bombing campaign and massacres that were erroneously blamed on the North Koreans. U.S. troops carried out mass rape, with some military commanders organizing patrols in villages for the sole purpose of raping Korean women. In the decades that followed the Korean War armistice, Abrams details the expansion of a vast comfort women system for American military personnel in Korea, fueled by trafficking and rapes on a massive scale, including of minors, and a prevailing debt slavery system, which provided further fuel for the North Korean leadership's drive to keep their population outside Western control. The Kim family cemented its legitimacy in the post-war era by overseeing the remarkable reconstruction of North Korean cities and furthering North Korea's industrialization. Foreign observers noted the high levels of technical education among the North Korean workforce, even in rural areas, with domestic industrial works such as hydroelectric dams considered to be nothing less than engineering masterpieces. The North Korean economy was far advanced of the South's through the 1960s, until the Vietnam War resulted in an artificial boom there. The North Korean economy furthermore suffered tremendously from the collapse of the Soviet Union, whose terrible consequence was exacerbated by flooding and other natural disasters in the 1990s. The Clinton administration sought to take advantage of the situation by denying relief aid while expanding extremely harsh economic sanctions through the UN Security Council, whose intent was to block all shipping into and out of the country and cut off all oil supplies. The Clinton administration planned for aerial strikes targeting the Yongbyon facility, where North Korea was then developing nuclear weapons as a deterrent. According to Abrams, a notable indicator of how the Korean War was fought was that the war crimes committed by U.S. and Allied forces were used by the defense of Nazi German war criminals to argue, on the basis that their atrocities were no worse than those committed more recently by the U.S. in Korea, that they should have their sentences commuted, pushing North Korea past the point of no return. The failure of U.S. economic warfare to facilitate regime collapse led to more aggressive approaches in the Bush and Obama eras, which pushed North Korea past the point of no return in its resolve to develop nuclear weapons. Pulling out of Clinton's agreed framework, a year into office on January 29, 2002, President Bush, in his State of the Union address, labeled North Korea as a member of the axis of evil alongside Iran and Iraq. Under Secretary for Arms Control and International Security Affairs John Bolton reportedly handed Bush a copy of the book, The End of North Korea, by Nicholas Eberstadt, and said, "That's our policy." An intelligence official who had attended White House meetings recalled that Bush and Cheney want Kim Jong-il's head on a platter. They have a plan, and they are going to get this guy after Iraq. Iraq, of course, turned into a quagmire, but Bush and Cheney also underestimated the Korean People's Army, KPA's conventional military capabilities and breadth of North Korea's underground munitions factories that made the country impossible to conquer. Ashton Carter, who served as defense secretary during Obama's second term, called North Korea a tough nut to crack, stating that North Koreans believe in socialism, but they believe even more in being proud Koreans. Children in North Korea have several hours of political education a day. Their parents did, and their grandparents did. The Obama administration intensified Bush's regime change efforts through A, an escalation of economic warfare and cyber warfare attacks, expansion of subversive radio broadcasts into North Korea, C, expanded military exercises with South Korea that were designed to send a threatening message, and E, a large-scale media vilification campaign that included promotion of fabricated stories by defectors and sponsorship of a Hollywood film about a plot to assassinate North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. Western journalists assisted in the vilification campaign by spreading outlandish stories that defied credibility. Kim Jong-un was falsely accused, for example, of feeding his uncle to dogs. Despite the harsh sanctions, Kim Jong-un oversaw a rejuvenation of North Korea's economy with a new emphasis on high-tech industries, along with investment in innovative projects for agriculture, such as fish farming and floating rice fields. Abrams emphasizes that the Obama administration's predictions of North Korean collapse was based on a prejudicial view of North Korea, far removed from reality. The fantasy of regime change was rooted in a colonial mentality that presupposed the U.S. capability of leading a supposedly backward Asian nation into enlightenment by importing U.S.-style democracy. Absent among those who embraced this vision was any consideration of the political economic interests underlying U.S. intervention in Southeast Asia going back to the 19th century, nor any understanding that North Korea had been targeted for regime change precisely because its government had forged an independent, industrialized economy and refused to allow for U.S. military bases on its territory that could provide a launching pad for attack on communist China. Game Over North Korea bolstered its defensive capabilities in the 2010s by testing ballistic missiles on an unprecedented scale and advancing its nuclear weapon program at Yongbyon. As a sign of its military strength, it has become emboldened to revive the Cold War practice of sending troops to support countries fighting against U.S. imperialism, like Syria and allegedly Russia. In 2018, Foreign Policy published an article titled, "The Game is Over and North Korea has Won." It observed, North Korea has a large stockpile of compact nuclear weapons that can arm the country's missiles, including its new intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of hitting the United States. That's another way of saying game over. North Korea is even stronger, today having unveiled even more advanced ICBM missiles, such as the Hwasong 17 and 18, a tactical nuclear warhead, Hwasai-31, and developed effective air defense and satellite surveillance capability. North Korea's defense sector has further demonstrated major advances in the production of modern conventional equipment, including cruise missiles and underwater drones. North Korea's economy has meanwhile benefited significantly from expanded trade with China and Russia, which has enabled it to increasingly offset the effects of U.S. sanctions. Abrams' book ultimately makes clear that David, North Korea, has defeated Goliath, the USA, after withstanding biblical-scale devastation. Whereas the Jews wandered in the desert for 40 years before entering their promised land, North Koreans had to endure 75 years of pure hell, though have also come out stronger on the other end.